Okay, me and Togi's story is really funny. So the level of estrogen at which he feels the best is also a level of estrogen at which he's a
Whoa!
What steroid's gonna give me like the best odds of being successful in bodybuilding? Probably the conclusion is gonna be against EQ is that it was never approved for human use. Anavar is also no longer approved for human use, but we still all use Anavar. Oh, well, you have one side effect, and so you're gonna use a drug to combat that side effect, and then it results in another side effect. The way that I like to look at it is, what's the healthy alternative? Is the alternative just like using the drug and dealing with the side effects and just like living with it? Or could we actually do something in the human body where we create a benefit to downside ratio that is more
Tattered.
I have a friend that like tests NPP trend, everything is in the gutter all of a sudden. Too many people get caught up in thinking like, all right, like what's like the safe dose? What's the cutoff point where if I go beyond this, now I'm in danger, but if I'm like around here, like I'm okay. Every little milligram of it is going to be affecting you in some way or another. It just, the question is like, is it to the point where your body can't regulate it? Enalapril, it's a ACE inhibitor as far as like one of its special properties besides reducing blood pressure for reducing hematocrit levels. And so that's one tool that we can leverage if we see that someone has hematocrit that's blown out. You've had guests on the show that have talked about Halo only, but their blood work looks perfect, but they're like, dude, I still feel horrible mentally. Which at that point, the only conclusion we can really come to is that I don't really want to be the, oh, I can do coke and blast gear if this guy coaches me. But like, if you are gonna do that, Togi comes to me one day and he's like, freakify me. I want you to do my cycle. The real hurdle was second cycle. Third cycle was where...
Before starting this podcast, I just wanted to say that ideating steroids for a full show is not widely accepted because it discounts the real work, which is the backbone of this sport. And unfortunately spreads that an unsafe chemical solution is all you need for results. Both of these are antithetical to society's understanding of the sport. And while there will always be some that claim that PEDs are all you need, I would like to deliver an honest message of what is required for achieving top performance, as well as the dangers associated with this route. I received this comment from a user named Nightscarens. But just as a rock climber, the athletes undergoing this path in the sport are willing to put their life on the line for their passion. Just the danger between the two sports is different. Luckily, we do have safety nets in the sport, such as organ imaging and regular blood work. But that doesn't change the high risk one must accept in taking on this competitive lifestyle.
We're starting off with racism. Let's go, boys.
All right. You want to try those headphones? See if you think you sound sexy?
I've used them before. They're a little weird, honestly.
You don't like them?
I mean, it feels like in the content. Digital world.
In the digital world.
Maybe I'll half send it, like John Summit.
In a world where John Summit takes back his alcohol from white blonde chicks.
Becomes successful off the K.
Off the K.
That video where he like leaks one of his songs. There's a key on his desk. It's like it got popular.
That's every DJ and musician ever. Honestly, there's nothing.
We just don't talk about it.
What were you saying about beta blockers? I know basically what I know about it is that maybe approximately 75% of musicians, like orchestral musicians, get on beta blockers as a performance enhancing drug.
Right.
Which is fucking nuts.
It's a little bit of a biohacking trick where you'll see people talk about public speaking or any kind of presentation case where they need to be calm, cool, and collected, but also focused on the task at hand. There's no room for anxiety there, right?
Yeah.
So the beta blocker comes in as this wonder drug where it will slow down your resting heart rate, but also some beta blockers will actually pass the blood-brain barrier. And so in doing so, they'll interact with the receptor sites there and result in a calmer mindset. So, like, for example, my sister has actually been prescribed beta blockers for anxiety. And so that's like one of the ways that they actually treated it for her. And so, like, given my genetics, I know that my family lineage responds well to it. So I'm able to use it, say, for example, like before this podcast. And so I can kind of just roll with the punches.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So, I don't. Why does this shit sound so loud? Does my voice sound louder than yours? Or is this me?
I don't know. Yeah, I think it does.
Oh yeah. I'm glad we caught that.
Mixed completely wrong.
That shit was blasting. Okay, there we go.
Now
That's a lot better.
Even levels now. Okay, sweet. Start yelling.
What were we saying? Yeah. So I know someone that has anxiety and depression. And I'm always curious just because, like, I feel like antidepressants just never sound like a good idea.
Yeah, it's a controversial issue. Like, I have my opinions too, and so I don't want to let them like cloud the discussion either. But like, for example, we've had like gear educators before. Leo in Longevity was one of those guys that has talked about using SSRIs to optimize, serotonin levels in the brain and whatnot, just in people that have lower levels. And there's mixed results. Like some people do get sexual dysfunction on SSRIs, and like that's a case where you probably would not want to be using them.
Yeah, it's for sure.
Yeah.
What about like beta blockers for anxiety versus what they normally prescribe for anxiety?
Yeah, so I think beta blockers are a lot milder. And so, if you're someone that does experience pretty severe panic attacks, like on a regular basis, I don't imagine that a beta blocker would be sufficient for that. You'd probably need a stronger medication, but it's just like a right tool for the right job kind of scenario.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
What are your, a little bit total sidetrack because we were mentioning this before the podcast. But what's your knowledge of MDMA on the heart?
Ooh, see, I wish I could give you a better answer. So basically, like, I understand that the bottom line mechanisms of MDMA, where it's like, what is the outcome of it? We're going to notice some heart rate elevations. We're going to notice a little bit more cardiovascular stress. And so I come at it more from like the how do I fix it side. So I think like the best metaphor to understand like how I approach things is to be a really good NASCAR driver, you don't necessarily need to know how an engine works. You just need to know like when to apply more gas, when to brake. Like it's all like the practical settings of things. So I have some friends and mentors and whatnot that understand like the chemical layers. Like they could probably explain to you every neurotransmitter that's involved in that process. And then that's like where we would collaborate and then give you a better answer. But you only have one piece of the puzzle on the other side of the table here. So as far as like combining fun drugs and trying to stay safe on them, there's a lot of things that I can do because, I mean, you've talked to some of my clients, they live very degenerate lifestyles. And so if they're going to be doing these things, then I need to find ways to make it as healthy as possible. Like, for example, doing a little bit of Schniefer-Goober, as Shane calls it, cocaine. You need to be careful about your heart, and you don't want that to go racing off into the sunset. And so something like, actually, we were talking about a second ago, a beta blocker could be a valid way to at least alleviate some of the danger of it. Not all of it. You don't get a free lunch.
Right. What are your thoughts on basically having to say about ancillary medications for risk aversion to all these people that are just like, you shouldn't be taking extra drugs?
I kind of figured that you would bring this up. So the term that people say is a lot is like polypharmacy, right? Where it's, oh, well, you have one side effect, and so you're going to use a drug to combat that side effect, and then it results in other side effects, and this and that and whatever. The way that I like to look at it is like, what's the healthy alternative? Is the alternative just like using the drug and dealing with the side effects and just like living with it? Or could we actually do something in the human body where we create a benefit to downside ratio that is more approachable to us? So, for example, you could make an argument that AIs have some indication for like side effects and whatnot, in which case, like, well, should we just deal with the side effects of high estrogen? Not necessarily. I think there's like probably ways where we could balance it out. So the end goal is really just a question of, all right, are you as an individual, given your personal risk tolerance, like, there's this side effect I really want to avoid. Is it worth the risk of adding another drug to prevent that? So like hair loss is a really obvious one. Finasteride. Have you heard of post-finasteride syndrome? Yeah. So some guys, like, they really want to cure hair loss so bad, that's more important to them than the side effects of finasteride. And so in that case, for that person, it makes complete sense.
Yep.
So that's where like polypharmacy builds out. It's just like a yes or no question. Does it make sense for you? All right, let's do it. Does it not make sense for you? Let's not touch it.
Yeah. I think it's really hard though, I guess, for us to all just weigh the risk. Like, that's what everyone's like paranoid about, most people who don't want to do finasteride is because they're just so fucking scared their dick's not going to work anymore.
Yeah.
But like, what is the percentage of people that happens to? Everybody thinks that it's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the issue.
Right.
And I think a lot of the times, sometimes when it happens, it is also because it's psychologically affecting them in that way.
Yeah, and it's good that you bring up like the chance of an issue. So a lot of the ways that people approach gear questions is they're like, hey bro, like what's the chance that like I hyper respond to this? Or like, hey bro, what's the chance that like my stops working on DECA or something? Like they're looking for a chance of something, but a chance is just like an average chance. Like what's the chance that I get into Harvard for grad school or something? Well, that depends on me. Do I have like an amazing resume with all of these like doctorates and like, experience and whatever? Then yeah, for sure. Your chance of getting into Harvard is a lot higher than someone else. So what that variation in chances is, it all boils down to genetics. So the end goal is, in my opinion, is if we can start understanding the human genome in such a way where it's like you get a blood test or you get a gene test and you scan yourself and we say, hey, Niall, if you were to use finasteride, you would get all of the crazy side effects of post-finasteride syndrome, just given your genetics. Now you know that there's an 100% chance that if you use finasteride, you should not touch it.
Yeah.
And it's either 0 or 100. It either happens or it doesn't. So that's what we're trying to look for. So I think guys basing their decisions off of like averages is a little bit dangerous, but also like we have incomplete information. So it's all that we have to go off of. So like as for the question of like how frequently does it happen, it's the minority of guys. Like we don't see PFS that often. There's some cases where people believe that like PFS isn't even a thing. So there's all different voices in that discussion.
We always have the guys that believe that it's not a thing whenever they're not the ones experiencing it.
Yeah, right. Which is, you know, you kind of like live in your own world too much. Guys have like, oh, well, I don't get side effects from this drug. That means it's great.
Luckily, I am one of the ones who I decided like, you know, fuck it. I care about my hair, so I want to try this shit. So been on finasteride and minoxidil for like maybe like a year and a half now, or maybe 2 years. I don't know. Hair has stayed. It's been amazing. I also do the microneedling. I have never, at least to my knowledge, experienced the post-finasteride syndrome or just any issues with sexual drive. But at the same time, I think I've been on Cialis regularly for longer than I've been on finasteride. So
yeah, and that stuff's popular now too. It's weird to think that it used to be like an older thing. It was kind of just like circulated around underground communities, like guys would be like, yeah, Cialis for pumps, whatever, or Viagra, and it made this big resurgence with all the research labs. I mean, I kind of play a part in that, popularizing it and making it circulate around all over again. But it's just like you're saying with the finasteride, like it's good to hear that it works for you.
I think everyone just fucking loves Cialis though. Ever since I like found out about it, man, like it's like you don't have to take it right before like Viagra. That's a fucking done deal, dude.
It's so nice. I mean, you'll see guys like argue like, oh, well, over time, like you're going to lose the potency of it. But honestly, I think it just like loses its shine a little bit because it's not as new anymore. You know, you get accustomed to it. And so I have guys ask me that question like, oh, if I stop using Cialis, am I going to like lose boner quality? But in reality, it's like, you know, if you've been driving a Lamborghini for 5 years and then you switch to a Honda Civic, it's not going to feel as special. Even though it's the same Honda Civic you drove before the Lamborghini. It's kind of the way I look at it.
So you think it's more psychological than what these people are thinking?
I think a little bit. And it doesn't happen to everyone too. Like, you know, I've been on it, I've been off it. You've probably done the same thing where it's just like, I mean, there's probably a slight difference, but you don't feel like you have erectile dysfunction if you completely stop using it. So
yeah. I don't really notice a difference that I think is really important enough, I guess.
Right.
Like, I mean, plus there's like different states that you're in, you know, sometimes you're fucking tired and it's 2 a.m. and your girl wants to fuck it. You're just like, I really don't want to right now. Or sometimes you wake up in the morning and you're fucking hard as a rock, which I think happens most of the time, at least in the morning. So I think mornings are just easier. It just depends on your state of mind.
And then you got to balance that because then there's often times where it's like she's not on the same wavelength as you. You guys kind of got to sync up. Yeah. Especially like in prep. Have you ever like had, well, actually you probably have a similar situation, but like bodybuilders get into prep and then their sex drives start fluctuating and they start arguing, they start fighting. Like if your relationship survives a prep, I think that says a lot about two people. Yeah,
I agree. I don't know how, but it seems like it's going pretty well.
Okay, so, sweet.
No sexual issues so far.
Nice.
Which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
I can't say when I was natural, of course, like my sex drive fucking tanked every single time. Fucking every time. Even like 6 weeks out, my fucking sex drive would be tanked already. But yeah, now that I'm running like this is like my first real prep where I'm actually even injecting anything, which is fucking insane.
Really?
Yeah, because I told you about the whole, about the oral situation.
Yeah, but I thought that was like forever ago.
It was forever ago,
like
but that
TRT.
My last show was forever ago. My last show was when I got my pro card in 2019 off of just orals. It was Winstrol and Halotestin.
Yeah, wow.
So
then this is like the first real prep.
Yeah, I feel like it's the first real prep, but something that I'd like to say is that what I look like right now versus what I look like, obviously I'm 4 weeks out. I'm not peak week, like I'm comparing myself, but peak week on Winstrol and Halotestin, I look pretty fucking nuts, dude. I look pretty crazy. So, I don't know, that Halotestin is something.
It's something else. Like mentally, did you get all the crazy effects of Halotestin, or was it mostly just physical for you?
No, I think it was mostly physical because I think I was already kind of down in the dumps from the prep in general, so I couldn't tell any difference really.
Yeah. Are you putting it in this time, or are you just doing injectables?
No, I have orals, but I'm not doing Halotestin this time, at least to my knowledge. Not the coach, surprise, motherfucker.
Yeah, right. No. I mean, it's always interesting because you combine like multiple different things together and you'll all of a sudden get a different result. Like being on Halotestin alone, which again, I wouldn't recommend to anybody. You've had guests on the show that have talked about Halo only, but
guests on the show.
It's, whatever. But then it could be completely different context if you're on testosterone plus Halo versus just Halo.
Yeah.
And we see this with a lot of different drugs where it's like, I have a friend that like tests NPP, feels awesome. Test Tren, feels awesome. Test NPP Tren, everything is in the gutter all of a sudden. Whoa, holy cow, how'd that happen? So you got to be really careful when you're juggling all these things at once.
Right. Have you ever noticed that like a dosage that would help the NPP and Tren together of like P5P? Like, can someone just up the dosage to like 300 milligrams or something?
So in the studies, I think the highest number I've ever seen is 300 milligrams in humans. And it's great to see it on there, but again, they're using it on like natural humans. There's really not a scenario where some dude is on like 3 different steroids and cranked out of his mind, lifting weights, whatever. So it's hard to say. Also, I've seen cases where like I can perfectly manage a prolactin level in a client who's on NPP and Tren and test, but their blood work looks perfect, but they're like, dude, I still feel horrible mentally, which at that point, the only conclusion we can really come to is the molecule itself is having actions at your brain receptors that it just does not agree with. It's like, I don't want this, get it out of me. You got to listen to your body at that point. I kind of disagree with coaches that will push their clients into territory like mentally where they don't feel okay on a daily basis. Prep is aside because, you kind of got to suffer a little bit. But, if you're using drugs that your coach is like, oh, suck it up, buttercup, like just do it. You got to feel good to look good to some degree. I agree. Yeah.
I agree 100%. The sleep is probably the most important part for me. And then, I mean, honestly, I think all of it is important actually.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I think people really underplay the mental aspect of running gear and just like how easily susceptible you are to just like teetering off the edge into the bad side. Like I had one of my best friends, Nathan, who used to live in San Diego. He probably had one of the best.
Brooks, right?
Yeah. Dude, I feel like he had some of the best genetics, one of the craziest physiques. Like I met him when he was like 22 years old, and he looked like a fucking beast. He was already bigger and stronger than me at 22 years old. He looks like a gorilla. Like the closest thing I can think of to like a similar looking genetic and shape to like Ramon Dino. So if he just kept building muscle, he'd look more gorilla-ish. But dude did a prep, won first place overall, and then quit competing altogether. And he was like, dude, that was the worst experience of my life. I think I was going insane and I could not sleep at all. So I'm fucking done with competing.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, I mean, if you could just change certain variables, like if things were different, like would he still be bodybuilding? And, we can't obviously go back and be like, oh, bro, just try this one more time. Like just do this different prep or do this different prep, whatever. But I've heard some people say before, like one of the biggest genetic factors to whether or not you're going to be a successful bodybuilder is just willingness. Like, do you actually want to do it to yourself over and over again?
I think that's a big part too, for sure. But I do think people underplay the value of like your optimal dose, and of course it's going to vary so drastically per person, right? Like some people are prescribed 100 milligrams of TRT, some people are prescribed 200 milligrams of TRT. That's double. That's double. Same thing could happen with steroid dosages easily, right?
Oh, for sure.
So I think that's why it's kind of like silly to compare and just like go off like a fucking Reddit forum and be like, this is where I should start off.
I
think like titrating, I feel like honestly titrating to microdoses first is like a great place to go. And then if you feel great on that, then you can keep upping it,
There's a sweet spot for sure. I think a lot of people should understand, and this kind of got popularized around the time like More Plates, More Dates was really pushing is like low dosage approaches. Minimum effective dose is what he would call it.
Yeah.
So when people would look at his minimum effective dosing standard, it was like, okay, like maybe I'm looking at like 150 tests, like maybe 100 tests, and for like a quote unquote cycle, like just getting started, and then obviously you progress it upwards as tolerated. What some people would do is they look at those numbers that he was putting out and they kind of just got uncomfortable with the idea of it. So they're like, oh, let me just try something lower. Until a certain point, you have to realize if you're injecting like maybe 65 milligrams of testosterone a week, you might actually be putting yourself in a position where your test levels are lower than what they were naturally.
Yeah.
and you think you're like on a cycle, like you're here to make gains and look sick and whatever, but you're really just shooting yourself in the foot. So like once you get over that hurdle, then it's the question of like, all right, I have like this sandbox to play in. Like here's this whole arena. You can go like really close to the cliff, wherever that cliff is, where like things get really dangerous. Or you kind of like play it safe. You stay over here, whatever. You know, you're obviously not going to live life in the fast lane if you're doing that, but it's different genetics too. Like some people just prefer different areas on that spectrum. That's why I think it's kind of silly that different doses will get judged because it's just a number.
Yeah, it is just a number at the end of the day. But you know, you and I see those comments. Dude,
tell them about the comments.
Dude, that guy probably doesn't even watch this podcast, but this is fucking comment.
He'll watch 3 seconds of it, leave a comment.
Yeah.
So
fucking the guy commented on that one Durrah clip, and dude outright was just like, you like just called Durrah out and basically just claimed that Durrah was a complete liar for saying that he took Tren that many times and that he stopped taking Tren and that Tren's bad, because he claimed that every single pro ever is always on stage taking Tren. Like they have to take Tren and that it's a miracle drug. And honestly, I'm just like, man, like everybody's not going to be you know? Just because you have to take Tren doesn't mean everybody has to take Tren.
No.
That's absolutely wrong.
You get stuck in their own like N=1 sample size studies where it's like, well, I did this one thing and I loved it and this is the secret to success. Therefore, all the guys that are bigger than me must be doing what I'm doing, but just triple the doses or whatever it is. They come up with these little reasonings in their head for why they don't look as good as other people. And they're like, oh, that's what it is. That's what it must be. When in reality, I mean, a lot of the controllables that they're not touching, like they're probably not dieting properly, they're probably not eating enough food, or they just flat out don't have the genetics. It's not, you know, it's not like 900 milligrams of Tren. It's not going to make you look like your favorite influencer. Like it's a really bizarre world. I think people are just projecting their insecurities everywhere they go. You'll see that outside of bodybuilding too.
Yeah. Real quick, guys. So while I was looking at the YouTube analytics, I actually saw that 85% of you guys that watch this channel are not subscribed. And I want to ask very little of you guys, but if you enjoy this podcast, if you find value in it, then please do me this one favor and subscribe to the channel, because doing so helps me get bigger and greater guests like the guests you are listening to today. Also, this channel is not sponsored, which means only the companies that I work with, which are Young LA and Huge Supplements, are the companies that can help fund this channel by you guys using the code NILE. So code NILE gives you a discount of 15% off of Young LA, and code NILE also gives you a discount of 10% off of Huge Supplements. And if you decide to purchase anything from any of these companies, it will help immensely for me by using my code. And this way, I can travel to other guests, such as Dr. Mike Israetel next week, and also upgrade in equipment to make this podcast bigger and better for you guys. I did watch that sector, the little portion of Steve's podcast where you guys were discussing me going to raves.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we're both definitely of the rave blood. You've been in it way longer than me. I was probably like a freshman in high school at the time that this guy was going out. But it's so cool to like start getting into that scene. It's gotten me a lot of connections. I actually designed some steroid cycles for like very big DJs. I can't say their names because they don't.
That's awesome.
They don't want to be publicly enhanced. But,
yeah, no, I get that.
You guys know who you are. I love you. Like, and so it's cool to like get VIP tickets and like hang out backstage with these people and whatever. But I've been going to rave sober ever since I came clean off of some harder drugs, and so it's a very different experience for me. But also it's a good way for me to like explain to guys the importance of harm reduction, both in bodybuilding and in every aspect of my life. Because I do like genuinely care about my body. I want to respect it as much as I can. Right.
I feel that too. Yeah. And I appreciate what you guys said too. That was really nice for you guys, especially Steve discussing how like, I think Steve thinks I'm more of a good boy than I actually am. But I do appreciate
he's like, you know, he's the dad. He's like, you kids, you don't know what we're really doing, right?
Yeah. But because he was like saying shit like, you know, I was really on top of his stuff and making sure he doesn't take drugs and stuff and just goes out sober and whatever to the festivals. And I do have like my own like protocols that I've learned over the years, and things that I completely avoid, or things that I know that aren't conducive to my health, especially if I'm running a cycle or like doing a prep, for example, like right now.
Yeah.
But I don't go out sober. Yeah. That's for sure. But I mean, taking a little bit of mushrooms, even if it's like a microdose, or taking a little bit of weed when I'm out there too. I definitely smoke when I'm out there for sure. Doing any of these things, for me at least, I don't really find it of conflict with my program or my protocol. Now, if I'm like, say, running NPP, or if I was running Trend, then if I smoke too much weed, then my prolactin would definitely increase a lot. Yeah. But I also bring P5P with me everywhere I go, just in case if I want to smoke weed. And when I take the P5P after I smoke weed, I feel my dopamine actually increase. Maybe it could be totally psychological, but my nipples get less sensitive. My nipples actually fucking get sensitive whenever you smoke. When I smoke too much, but they get less sensitive, and then I feel completely fine, and I have a lot more energy, which is kind of cool. So I do that. And then I think the last thing, I haven't talked about this before. This is an interest of mine because I am curious. I know there's not too much research on, say, like MDMA on the heart. Yeah. Obviously, it does affect the cardiovascular system to a certain extent. I completely stopped doing press pills multiple years ago. Stopped doing cocaine years ago. Don't do any stimulants whatsoever. Obviously, biggest reason because of bodybuilding, no alcohol also. But I do microdose MDMA occasionally. So the microdose is small. Like I'll start with 1/4 of a point, and then I'll take another 1/4 of the point later. So normally I'll end up at the end of the night, I've taken maybe half a point throughout the entire day, or maybe even 3/4 of a point throughout the entire day, which comparatively to the average is very small.
Yeah. Especially in San Diego. I mean, you hang around certain rave groups, it's like Skittles, dude.
But at the same time, that's not like, that's not the perfect world where I'm being absolutely 100%, perfect with my health. So I think that's what my curiosity is like, how much will that actually affect me? Say that I'm like running a cycle, not with Clin, but like, with actually other substances, like it's definitely something of concern.
Yeah. So I think the best way to look at it is like everything is a spectrum. I think too many people get caught up in thinking like, all right, like what's like the safe dose? Like what's the cutoff point where if I go beyond this, now I'm in danger. But if I'm like around here, like I'm okay. Every little milligram of it is going to be affecting you in some way or another. The question is like, is it to the point where your body can't regulate it? And so like, finding that tipping point is obviously very tricky because of genetic variability. And so really the best way to look at it is like, hey, I'm going into this. I know I'm going to be doing this. What's the best approach that I can take to mitigate the risks as much as possible? Mm-hmm. So it's just like you're doing with like whenever you smoke, you have a little P5P on you. That's like a minor biohack, which imagine if everyone knew that, like, oh, we're going to go smoke, like bring your P5P with you. It'd be such like an interesting dynamic where everybody knows to bring it with them. Mm. I think probably the first time I ever saw that was actually the rave community where guys would take like vitamin C with them whenever they'd know that they would be rolling. And then now they sell like these more fuller booster packs with like all these vitamins and nutrients and whatever in them, so that you're able to sleep the night after you take it, so that the morning after you don't have too much of a hangover. You feel a little bit more functional, especially if you have a really hard roll. People just want to do things, but with minimal consequences. And so as science starts adapting, we're just like trying to find ways in order to make that as doable as possible. Mm-hmm. We don't have the research there, but what's really interesting is that a lot of people find that real life practice will outpace scientific research. In bodybuilding especially, because bodybuilders are freaks. They will put anything in their own bodies for the sake of experimentation.
And there's literally no science on bodybuilders.
Exactly. And then we start finding scientific studies like years later that discover, oh yeah, those guys that did those weird experiments however many years ago and already figured out that they take this for this, yeah, they were right. Why are all these bodybuilders taking telmisartan? It's like, oh, well, it has a variety of other benefits besides just, blocking angiotensin and all these other things. So, it's cool to find these little spaces where it's like we have the opportunity to make the science before it makes it to the paper, before it gets published. I think it's crazy. That's the only one I've had professionally done. All the others, like, some girl with a thumbtack through my ear.
Really? Yeah. And all of those are fine.
Actually, this second one I did with a 18 gauge needle. I was on a syringe. I just because I wanted another one.
With a syringe?
Yeah, with a syringe.
No way.
It was such a bad idea. Like an 18 gauge was actually not big enough.
An 18 gauge wasn't big enough?
It was not big enough, no. So I was pushing the earring in. It hurt so bad, but it healed okay.
That's the most bro thing you could have ever done.
I know.
Dude, that's crazy.
Well, it's so fun. I mean, you probably know this too. Like all these guys will just like be like, "Oh, bro, you're so gay." Like nice earrings, and start throwing slurs at you, and you're like, "Okay."
Do people still do that these days?
Sometimes I'll still get comments, but
wow.
I don't know, I stopped caring. You get on testosterone, just like people can wash off you.
Maybe some people don't care about me wearing them because I'm Asian. I'm fucking bunch of all the Asians.
The Asian, you get a pass for it.
All the Asians in California fucking wear earrings.
That's true. Yeah.
Asians in K-pop and Korea wear earrings.
Yeah, the Korean got the danglies on them all the time. Oh, there's a dude on TikTok who makes fun of like Asian American culture. It's so funny.
What?
Yeah, I mean, because growing up in California, I'm like surrounded by Asian kids. I know exactly the stereotype. Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is.
Oh, okay.
He eats like parody stuff. I can't think of it, but yeah, it's nostalgic to be here. But I actually hate California. I don't
what?
Like,
why?
Yeah, I don't like being here. I like having seasons, and so I went to Colorado for university. I like loved it there.
Colorado is beautiful though. That's cool.
Well, the mountains
and the base. Fucking what? Denver, the fucking base capital.
Oh yeah, base capital. Yeah. Have you ever been to Red Rocks?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I watched BTSM guest listen to me for their Red Rock show like a couple years ago. Fucking insane.
They're nice guys too. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're not about to tell me that you set up Julian's cycle, are you?
Does he look like he's on cycle?
I do fuck with him though. I do fuck with your rings.
Oh yeah. No, thank you.
Pretty sick.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So down to the dirty questions. What got you started with coaching Togi?
Ooh, okay. Me and Togi's story is really funny. So imagine like all the followers that you get. You'll have like a bunch of people that'll send you DMs and they'll ask like little questions and stuff here and there. Mm-hmm. Imagine one of them you just get a weird feeling about. You're like your little like star factor meter in your heart is like, this kid's about to be something gigantic. And I have no idea why. He was asking me the same questions about like, wait, so can I combine this like with enclomiphene? Like, is that safe? I'm like, yeah, sure. And he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna do my first cycle someday. Like I hear this all the time. But Togi was something different. It was the same with Sam Sulek and I were mutuals like way long ago on TikTok before he blew up. Like you see these people and you're like, you're going to be gigantic immediately off the rip. So I gave him a bunch of advice, not really because of that, but I mean, I answered most people's questions. At a certain point I started getting too big and he really wanted a sponsorship with one of the brands I was on. And so I talked to the owner of it and he's like, I mean, he just needs more followers. So he's like, okay, sure, I'll do it.
Wait, one of the brands said that Togi needed more followers?
Yeah.
Because of what? Because sorry, I missed something.
Yeah.
I missed something.
So Togi's like been talking to me for a while. Like he really wants to do the whole influencer thing. And he's asking me questions about like, how do I do it? Like, how do I work with this brand? Whatever. I'm like, yeah, dude.
Like a brand that he picked or
a brand that I work with.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So he's like, how do I work with them? I offered to put in a good word for him and I did, but the brand is saying, he just needs a bigger audience and then it'll make sense.
Yep. So, as they always do.
Yeah. So they gave him a number and then within like a month or two, he hit it. And they're like, okay, he did it. Cool. Like, here's a sponsorship, whatever. And then it was around that point, he got the idea to start doing the gear edits. And that's like where everything went crazy. I had no hand in his first cycle. It was pretty moderate. I think it was just on tests or something.
That wasn't in, you had no hand.
No, I had no.
That was completely on him.
That was completely on his own. I mean, he probably took it like from the stuff that I made, like all my videos, because he really liked my stuff. And then,
but he said it was just 250 tests, right?
Yeah, and then I think he played around with some Anavar in there too, and said that like he didn't really get anything out of Anavar.
Which is probably why he made that video. And then fucking Greg Doucette,
where he just ripped on Anavar, is like, Anavar does nothing. That's such a classic.
And then fucking Greg, dude.
Yeah,
Greg's video to that was hilarious.
And so then Togi comes to me one day, and he's like, just. Basically, I'm paraphrasing here. Togi, I mean, you didn't say it like this, but it's like freakify me. Like I want to actually grow. Like I want you to do my cycle. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And I already knew from the get go because a lot of people will look at the cycle that I gave him. And, if you like put it up on screen, you see all the numbers. You're like, okay, what kind of freak bodybuilder is doing this? Meanwhile, it's like barely 190-pound Shane, and it's because of he only wanted to do this for a very short amount of time. He's like, I'm going to be in and out. It's not going to be my life, but I want to have fun with it. I want to see what it's like. And I know that he had microcytosis. So with those two variables at play, like those were the biggest factors in me like building the way he did. And he loved it and he felt amazing on it. Of course, there was like some learning curves where it's like, I was like, hey, I know you want to try trend. There's like a bucket list item for him. Tries it, absolutely hates it, immediately kicked out of the cycle.
That is pretty crazy at 80 milligrams though too.
That's a low dose.
Like such a low dose, and he felt that crazy.
It destroyed him. Yeah. But it's just like, we talked about the genetic variability a little earlier.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there are people who will take something like 70 milligrams and feel nothing. And then there are guys that take 80 or even same dose, 70, and they're just destroyed.
If you guys are wondering what he's talking about, I haven't talked about this ever until now. So I just revealed to him basically that I finally started the trend part of my prep cycle.
Pop the cherry.
So, yeah, pop the cherry. First time taking trend ever. 10 milligrams a day. So that was like one. It was like fucking. It's like fucking the one.
Feel this
every day. But yeah, dude, the first time even though it was fucking one, the first injection, I felt something come out of my throat. I was like, it was kind of weird. I wonder where that was from. Definitely not the trend.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I don't feel anything from 70 milligrams a day. So, and coach wants me to titrate up to 100. So I am.
You'll be fine.
And I don't feel anything.
If 70 is feeling crispy clean, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I feel pretty normal.
Shane was not having it at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, any of the 19 Nors, there was a period of time where we were trying ment on him and he just was not really feeling it. He called it the ment voices. He felt like he was a little psychotic. and I talked to him off camera and stuff, and he's like, yeah, I kind of hyped that up. Like, there wasn't actually voices, but like,
yeah,
you know, it's views.
It's funny though.
Yeah, it's so funny.
No, that's crazy.
I love ment, dude. It makes me really love you with my girlfriend.
Really?
Yeah. I get like all over her. And so she complains when I'm not on ment. She's like, oh, you're not on ment.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a Molly type of love, or like a a Horty trend type of love?
Kind of like effeminate. Like, imagine like a clingy girlfriend. Like, you know, just want to be all over. Like, what are you doing today? Like, can I see you? Like, all this stuff. All you're thinking about is her. And like, if something bad happens to her, you're like, oh, I could start crying about this right now. But you know what it is it's definitely the methylestradiol coming from the ment, like that really potent estrogen that's just like skyrocketing it. Yeah.
Whenever you have like an increase in methylestradiol, do you feel that?
Not always. So
not always.
And what's really weird is everyone's built different. So I know some guys that like, they'll get on ment, they get really angry. They get super mad. Like their temper is just uncontrollable. But you'll notice a trend where it's like whenever their estrogen gets high, instead of being the type to like cry during Disney movies and whatever, they just become really mood swingy.
That's me.
Yeah.
When my estrogen is too high, I get mood swingy and I get angry.
Yeah.
I get aggressive.
Yeah. So you'll probably be like that on ment.
Yeah. So every time I see myself watery and then I'm like, fucking, I want to yell at the gym, I realize like, oh shit, I need to take some Aromasin or something.
Yeah. That self-awareness moment where you're like, oh, that's not me, it's the drugs. Oh, okay, I'm all right.
Yeah.
But in the moment, it feels so real. You start to become very empathetic for like your girl going through a period and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Dude.
Oh, that's funny though. Damn, that's cute. That's interesting. Definitely want to. Haven't done ment yet, but now you got me curious. Do you ever measure your methylestradiol? Do you ever notice? Because I don't fucking understand, to be honest. I'll be real. I just don't understand how to manage that, or if I'm.
So one of the weirdest things about methylestradiol coming from ment is a very strange compound where you'll see some studies where they say, oh, well, like it's an estrogen. That obviously means like it aromatizes. And so like it's the aromatase enzyme.
But it's different than E2 though.
It's different. Yeah. It's actually not the aromatase enzyme, which means if you use an AI, it's not going to do anything against the ment estrogen, which is super strange. So for guys that like they're experiencing high ment estrogen, they keep slamming themselves with like AIs. They're going to end up like deleting their natural estrogen. All they have is methylestradiol. So it's this like really weird system that they end up with instead. So the only thing you can do is use compounds that would like compete with the methylestradiol for the estrogen receptor. So something like Masteron, there's an option. Primo, there's an option.
Okay.
Even Boldenone, if you have the genetics for it, that's more competition for the estrogen receptor. So there's less likelihood of that methylestradiol binding to it and exerting.
I see. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. How would that affect your regular estrogen though? I mean, I guess you would want to make sure that you don't crush or reduce your E2 if you're also adding on those compounds for the sake of the methylestradiol.
Right.
Like,
and so it's all a balance, right? So like I'm trying to think of a good metaphor here. Like, you know, you're trying to balance, you have like this big like bag of marbles. And then there's an occasional chance that you pull out like a red marble, and the red marble is like the methylestradiol, right? And if you pull that one, then you get like plus 10,000 estrogen points or whatever. But then all the other marbles are like green. So you pull a green one, it's like, oh, plus 5 estrogen. Okay, whatever. So you just want to balance the ratio so that every time you go to grab a marble, the chance of you pulling a methylestradiol or pulling a green balances out so that the average is something that's comfortable that your body can handle.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you have obviously a bag full of methylestradiol, then every single time you get an estrogen receptor binding, it's all methylestradiol. Of course, your estrogen is going to be sky high.
Right.
You want to kind of like find that average ratio that you feel good on.
That's why it's such a game, man.
It is, honestly, but it's a fun game.
Everybody wants to, like, there's a lot of comments that a lot of people want to believe this is it. But dude, every person's game is so different, dude.
Yeah.
So different.
We're all human, but also so different at the same time.
You just got to toy around with your... So that sounds weird as fuck.
You sound what?
You gotta toy around with your body.
Oh yeah, just play with yourself. You know, can you clip that?
You definitely have to like something I've been doing in the last like maybe 5 years. I guess I haven't been running it for 6 years, but in all the time since I've started gear, I just write in my notes. Like every time I do a cycle, then I write symptoms that I feel. And then finally, and now maybe in the last 2 years, I haven't really ever felt any symptoms worth writing that are different from normal, which is cool.
Yeah.
So I think that goes to show that like if you just at least record things kind of the same way that you track your progress in training and your weights and your sets and stuff, then I think you will also gain some like subconscious knowledge around what you're doing.
Subconscious knowledge. That's exactly what I was going to say, where it feels like you kind of hone in on that sweet spot a little bit better, where it's like training, you just develop a sixth sense for like, this is the exact number of reps I know I'm going to be able to push with this. You start being able to feel like how much you actually have in the tank. When you're a beginner in the gym, you have no idea. You just kind of keep lifting until it gets heavy. And it's like, can I do one more? I don't know. Same with gear. It's like you start to realize like, okay, I have a feeling for where my estrogen's at right now. You start to develop that sixth sense for it. And then like the more cycles you do, the less likely it is for you to just like totally screw something up. And then you're like catastrophically psyched out on trend or whatever, you know. It's just an experience game. And so I think with a lot of guys that are like doing their first couple cycles, you got to look at it that way. It's all experimentation, where you have to be like ready for this ride. There's going to be twists and turns. Like it's not going to be, oh, I studied everything and this guy said I have to do this cycle this way and use the AI at this week and at this dosage and I'm going to be 100% fine. You have no idea. Like you're going to go down that route and there's going to be bumps and twists and turns and whatever happens. You're just going to have to know how to adapt when you get to those points.
What were the, because I guess the first cycle was Togi's choice, but then the second and the third cycle was from you, right? So what was the second cycle and what was the third cycle and why did you put them on those compounds?
Yeah. So second cycle was, Togi liked it. It was test primo. And we talked about it a lot beforehand. You really got to communicate with your clients first. Test primo is really just like, he's looking for clean, aesthetic, good, presentable Instagram gains, and wants to push things a little bit. So, okay, all right. It's really funny. I don't actually remember the doses of it. I know Tess was like sitting around 500 and Primo, we were trying to dial in for his estrogen. This is where I first found out that Togi's genetics are really weird. So, which is, he knows this, but the level of estrogen at which he feels the best is also a level of estrogen at which he's accruing gyno.
Whoa!
Yeah, which is really bad. Fuck? So when his estrogen's just low enough that his gyno stops, like he stops getting the itchiness, whatever, he feels depressed. Like he hates life every day.
That sucks.
It's really bad. And then he's just like, dude, I have the money. I'm just going to get gyno surgery. Like I'm just going to let it grow. I'm like, all right, you're going to feel better, but obviously there's a trade-off there.
Yeah. So
that's what we opted with. And it was, months and months of me like testing different AIs on him, seeing like, okay, are you having a response to this, response to that? Is raloxifene going to slow the gyno growth in the meantime? Tamoxifen.
Right. I was going to ask.
We had a whole...
You guys did use SERMs.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we ended up finding was like the best was the raloxifene was slowing it, but he could still feel like bit by bit it was still sensitive. Yeah.
And there was no amount of SERMs that you could use to completely prevent the growth.
Not to completely prevent it, no. And also, given the doses that he's using, we do understand that there's some risk of blood clotting if you use like mega doses of SERMs, especially long term. And and he was going to be on SERMs all the way until his gyno surgery. I couldn't reasonably put this kid on like 100 milligrams of raloxifene every day.
That makes sense.
Surgery, so had to pump the brakes on that a little bit.
Damn, that sucks, man. Those genetics are harsh.
Yeah.
At least he only has it really in one nipple.
Yeah, there's like one that's kind of blowing out more than the other. It's unfortunate, but he's doing all right. He's getting it cut soon, actually. I think like in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, cool. So that was the real hurdle was second cycle. Third cycle was where...
Do you know what the number was, the estrogen number, like, or range where he feels best?
I think it's like 45. So like 45,
Wow.
50, 60. But he's so
that's
sensitive.
interesting.
Like if I went like 5 digits above or 5 digits below that, he would just blow out.
Gotcha. I
Side
see.
effects one way or the other. It was really weird.
So one of my boys, he'll be fine that I talk about this. My boy Trevin from San Diego, when he was running gear, well, actually, sorry, not when he was running gear, just in general, the guy has extremely high estrogen, and it's normal for him. Like the estrogen is way out of range, super high. Sometimes it's close to like 100.
Yeah.
But that's normal, and he feels completely normal. Doesn't get any gyno from it. But that's just what it is in his blood work, and it's fucking insane. So like he'll actually like go to the doctor, and they will prescribe him certain things. I think for. To be honest, I don't really remember, so I can't recite something that
They
I
gave
don't
him
totally
something.
remember.
Yeah.
But like, it's weird that like his estrogen can be that high, but he feels totally normal. So when he runs gear, then it gets overcomplicated because it's like,
yeah, it's really funny you say that. My first cycle, my estrogen was 200, and I felt normal. I didn't have any gyno.
holy shit,
Really weird. Yeah. And so on that cycle, I was like, dang, like I guess I'm immune. Like that's awesome. Sweet.
Yeah.
And I felt pretty good. But what I started noticing is I started losing morning wood every morning. Like I'd wake up and just not have it.
Yeah.
And so I knew that this wasn't sustainable long term. And I didn't get any gyno whatsoever until my coach at the time added in 19 Nors. And so he added in DECA and just completely started getting gyno signaling, everything.
I see.
It like obliterated me mentally too. But
So do you think you're more prone then to like prolactin sides and prolactin gyno than to estrogen?
I would think so, but I controlled my prolactin, and I did it with Caber first and then with Promi. Caber, in retrospect, was a mistake. I have some particular opinions about it.
Wait, I want to hear this afterwards.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And then I also tried P5P, and it just didn't change how I felt. And so that was like my conclusion was like, dude, I just need to get this DECA out of my system.
I got you.
It was such a low dose. It was only 175 a week. It's like really low. Yeah. So my body disagreed with it, but you wanted the tangent on.
Yeah, with the Tanger and Camber.
So Pramipexole and Caber, they're both treatments for hyperprolactinemia. One interesting thing that you guys should know about Caber is that it is the only one that's associated with heart fibrosis. And it is a really interesting medication in which there is a certain serum level in the human body, which if you hit it, it is basically guaranteed that you will get a certain fibrotic outcome. So there's like a lifetime dosage of Caber that you can handle. And once you hit that, like you're cooked essentially.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that's like the extreme fun fact. And obviously there's like some concerns about whether or not it's fully true, but it's like one of the most interesting ones I've seen. Whereas Pramipexole, the other one, there's no indication of heart fibrosis at all. And so if you really are caring about like taking care of your body as much as possible, you're going to have to like try and bias your dosage towards Prami. Downside is some guys like get like instant projectile vomiting whenever they use Prami. And so they have to like use a microdose of Prami that they can handle and then as much Caber as is necessary to achieve the desired result.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what did you feel then when you were doing Caber, or what did you notice from your results?
It was just nothing. And I was like talking to the source at the time. I was like, dude, like, did you give me a bad batch? Like, what is this? It's like, you saw the test results. Like that was from the exact batch that it came from, whatever. And I'm like, I'm the type of person to check like under every stone to make sure it's 100% right. And I couldn't figure anything else out. And so by default, I come to the conclusion, I'm like, dude, it's not working for me. So I took a step away from that. And then it was shortly after that I got a new coach. I got put on EQ. And then I had a similar response to Shane, where it's like my favorite steroid ever.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's hear about this, because you know that everybody wants to hear about this.
Yeah. So, first, I mean, if you've been in the gear education space for a while, you know that there's a lot of different camps and they have a lot of different opinions on things. So one of the opinions is like EQ should never be used. It has no place in bodybuilding.
Yep.
No one should ever use it.
Right.
And there's tons of people who like, they look to the scientific literature and there's a lot of evidence that you could point to suggesting, yeah, it's probably not that safe. Okay. All right. Let's leave that where it is.
I just had a podcast with the Physique Collective, which are the guys who coach Jared Feather and basically help Dr. Mike Israetel with their knowledge on PEDs.
All the Renaissance periodization guys. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they obviously don't say EQ should never be used, but they avoid using it in any of their
avoid.
stuff.
Let's say avoid. Yeah.
Right. Just because of like simply the literature on how long-term health.
Right. And so
the best choice.
Yeah. So the way you look at it is like, okay, what steroid's going to give me like the best odds of being successful in bodybuilding? Like what's the like least likely chance of side effects, whatever, like probably the conclusion is going to be testosterone and growth hormone and insulin. Like your body already produces it. They're pretty well tolerated. Beyond that, you could go down the route of saying primo, anavar. These are all like relatively well supported compounds. The one argument that I don't like against EQ is that it was never approved for human use. Anavar is also no longer approved for human use, but we still all use Anavar. Anavar is great for a lot of us. So I don't really subscribe to that. We also know that it was initially called Parenabol, and that was used in humans, but it was quickly discontinued. There's some reasoning to believe that it was actually discontinued because of some shady practices by the companies that owned it and were competing against it at the time. But, this stuff was like 60 years ago, 80, 70 years ago now. Like, it's so hard to access that info. Everyone who researched it is dead. Like, I wish we could, resurrect them out of their graves and talk to them. But let's talk about the actual compound itself. So the main reason I'm so optimistic about EQ having potential in bodybuilding is because in the studies that we do have, we know that, let's say they give EQ to a bunch of chickens and they all get kidney failure. It's like, okay, well, the chickens were not using telmisartan. Like, they were not using any ancillary drugs. And so when you make the comparison of like, oh, well, like they gave this dose of Primabol into an animal and they gave this dose of equipoise to an animal, but then this animal died on the equipoise, but it was fine on the primo. So yeah, at baseline, the drug is like dangerous, should never be used, whatever. But we have the ability to basically create this Frankenstein system around the drug that makes it more acceptable to the human body. And so we're talking about controlling our hematocrit levels, controlling our RBC levels, monitoring our red blood cell count, which most bodybuilders should be doing anyway. And so if you're doing all of these things, and you are able to achieve healthy blood workers, like, healthy blood work markers, then what's the problem? That's like my question basically posed to the other community.
Gotcha.
Is like,
it's like if you're like
if everything's healthy, where's the issue? And they're saying that, oh, well, even despite you being healthy, the compound itself is inherently dangerous. But we're not seeing, we don't have the studies on that. Like my long-term goal, if I make enough money, if I get enough code uses, whatever, I got to run like an official study on equipoise and then just like completely dissuade this issue forever. But unfortunately, I don't think we can get funding for steroid studies anymore. Right. It's not in demand.
What are the other things that you would suggest aside from like the phlebotomy that you discussed that would be important?
Right. So let's actually talk more specifically about like how I would manage someone who's using equipoise. So it's always going to be case by case dependent. Like there's some people, Shane, for example, he has microcytosis. The increase in red blood cell count is actually a benefit to him because his body's like oxygen carrying capacity is already dismantled by his genetics. So from that disadvantaged position, it's actually a benefit. So we're going to let that kind of like run within control. I'll test it every once in a while. Like, if he gets a blood draw for blood work and he feels better, it's usually an indication that he could probably get some blood taken out and feel a lot better. But if he gets a blood draw and feels sluggish, whatever, probably means that he needed that blood. We're, doing what we can because there's no evidence of steroid users with microcytosis. This is kind of breaking new ground for me. So when I start approaching like an average client or like someone with like pretty reasonable genetics, let's say like for example, for myself, first priority is blood pressure and cholesterol, no matter what. So let's assume that those are in range. Then we start talking about hematocrit. One interesting example is because I live at altitude in Colorado. When you live at altitude, your body adapts to that altitude by increasing hematocrit levels. It's trying to become more efficient with the little amount of oxygen that you have in the air. The air is thinner there. So I'll clock in artificially with my hematocrit being higher. So I need to be mindful of that when I'm changing my doses and things like that. I have a little bit of leeway above the reference range because my body needs that adaptation for the low amount of oxygen in the air. If I am at a point where I do need more help on my hematocrit, first intervention is water. Usually guys have high hematocrit because they're just not drinking enough water. They start drinking, a gallon plus a day. Usually they start getting to a point where they're healthy and they're fine. Beyond that, medication-wise, I like enalapril. Enalapril, it's a ACE inhibitor. It's going to be pretty effective as far as like, one of its special properties, besides reducing blood pressure, for reducing hematocrit levels. And so that's one tool that we can leverage if we see that someone has hematocrit that's blown out. RBC, just like we talked about earlier, you could go the phlebotomy route. Some people like to just do more cardio, like to use up those red blood cells. So at least like put them to good use. Just for example, you have long distance cardio athletes like Lance Armstrong. They're doing the Tour de France. They're using EPO in their body to artificially increase their red blood cells because they want that performance. So leverage that. I mean, you now have an advantage over other people. That's why there are bodybuilders like Dallas McCarver that would use EPO for bodybuilding purposes. So you get freakish endurance in the gym. Is it extremely risky? Yeah, absolutely. It's frowned upon and not talked about, but how far are you willing to take it? That's up to your own personal risk aversion.
Yeah.
Hemoglobin,
Durrah.
same thing. You got to stay hydrated. Yeah, Durrah. It's a good example of his talk. And then we start talking about kidney disease inherently. So one compound that I do like for it is canagliflozin. That is an SGLT2 inhibitor. So basically, although it's mainly used to control blood glucose in like diabetes populations and stuff like that, or for bodybuilders who are using very high doses of growth hormone, could use it for that too. It's quite effective as a side benefit of reducing the progression of CKD, chronic kidney disease. So we basically look at this like entire risk profile of a drug, and I almost see it like a challenge. It's like, all right, how can I dismantle this and make it actually safe for someone to use? And then we lay out the kitchen sink on it. But obviously you have to be very deliberate. You need to adjust things depending on the individual. You need to be checking blood work pretty religiously. And if there's a point at which the individual's like, I don't feel good, I'm feeling anxious, I'm having this side effect, I can't get my blood pressure under control, it's just not right for you. So don't use it. But it doesn't mean it's not right for anyone.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
That was a great way to express to people why not just getting your blood work is important. Because everyone's just like, oh, I'll check my blood work, see if it's good. But like, there's so much more that comes to, I think, managing your genetics with what you're taking. As you said, there's just so many variables that I think are easily forgotten. So, and then you include all the ancillary medications as well. And there's so many. There's so many out there. There's so many to choose from, right?
There's even some that we haven't discovered yet, which is awesome. Yeah.
Like I was even talking to my doctor about because I'm on tesamorelin, but he wanted me to start losartan instead.
Okay.
Well, he did also suggest amlodipine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my blood pressure wasn't super high. It was higher than obviously 120/70, but
what were you like 140s, 130s?
I was like 130s.
Okay.
But he suggested losartan just because, from what he said, better, less side effects. Low dose losartan is better, less side effects. So I was just like,
that's a
I wonder why he says that. Right. That's what I was curious about too. So, because I know a lot of people, a lot of bodybuilders, especially most bodybuilders, default to tesamorelin.
It's kind of just because it's the one that's most talked about, and I think that's actually true for a lot of things. Did you ever get to talk to Vigorous Steve about how he basically artificially increased the price of Primo?
Artificially increased the price of...
Yeah, so all of his content, all of his friends' content that basically says like Primo's the best drug. I mean, they're not saying that, but they obviously circulate it a lot.
Yeah.
Well, it's economics. Demand has to meet that.
It is,
and
right.
So all of the Primo prices just kind of creep up a little bit. And then there's other drugs that they'll talk about too.
Did they actually increase the Primo prices?
He believes so. I believe so. Yeah.
Funny.
So, even Shane talking about injectable Superdrol, that used to get no attention, and now it's like such a hot topic. I get so many DMs about it. Yeah.
What kind of DMs?
Well, it's just like, bro, how old do I need to be to get on injectable Superdrol?
Oh my
like
God.
all these stuff. And I'm like, dude, go cook some chicken breasts or something.
Chicken breast.
Go tell your mom you're sorry. Go tell your mom you love her. Like, you're too young to be doing this. Which also is another question, because there's a lot of guys who become very successful in bodybuilding very young, suspiciously.
I know, man. It's a hard one. I've had that conversation with a lot of guests. And,
yeah, which I think was a hot topic around the time that Anton went pro, but
yeah,
it's been talked to death.
Right. Exactly. It is hard because you just don't know if you have the genetics or not. I mean, I feel like the best way to know if you have the genetics is just fucking start lifting when you're like, I don't know, a preteen or something, and keep lifting naturally. And hopefully when you're 18, see how big you are and how great you look. And still then you don't know your genetics well enough, but you have a much better idea than someone who didn't. So
yeah, I think, and this is probably something that your followers will wonder a lot too. Is just like, oh, like, can I do this? Like, if I do my first cycle, how many pounds do I expect to gain? Like, will you know if I have the genetics to make it here, make it there, whatever? Like, why does it matter? Like, if you focus on like what you can do today, then the end goal isn't going to matter. Are we still running? Yeah. Okay. Sweet. Or it's this concept of like, imagine some kid asks you like, oh, like, do I have the genetics to become pro? And you ask him like, why does it matter? Like, if I tell you that you're not going to make it to a pro, are you going to stop lifting? Like, do you actually just not care about the gym, or do you care about the cardboard stick? Yeah.
I mean, I think the human mind, we like to overthink a lot. A lot. And as much as most of us don't want to admit it, a lot of us are susceptible to other people's opinions and other people's, or just the voices. In fact, if you just hear something, even if you hear something subconsciously, or you even just hear an advertisement or see it pass by while you're on the TV that's in your head. And so if someone's going to continuously say, this guy's on steroids, you will never look like them, it will probably actually change your path and what you do if you're not one of the people that, like, you know, for example, like us, is completely committed to, say, like getting to Olympia or like being this bodybuilder or like taking gear and learning about gear in general and like our hormones. So, I mean, that's why I don't really like the whole like crushing people's hopes and dreams by like trying to talk about reality. I'm just like, you guys don't know shit. Like, you don't know what someone else can accomplish. So at least let them, like, just tell them about all the bad health consequences, and then they let them make a fucking decision for themselves.
Yeah, I think
not your body.
It's good. It puts a hurdle in front of them, and if it's like, if you want it badly enough, you'll climb any hurdle that's in your way, for sure. So if they see like all these health consequences, like, oh, you're gonna die at 35, which, like, we know is not true, but, you know, will you still do it?
Well, unless you're doing Boston Loyd.
Really? Yeah. Oh, Boston. I have a couple mentors that like were coached by him and talk to him, and they're like, yeah, I've gotten cycles from Boston. I'm like, oh yeah, can you show me it? And I see it, and it's like, I'm like scrolling. I can scroll for like 2 minutes, like the number of compounds that he would give these people.
Damn, that's insane.
Yeah.
Was that always for preps, or like what did you see during bulks? Do you remember?
No. So it's been really the coolest thing to like become friends with these guys, like behind the scenes, and because they're not going to make videos about this stuff talking openly, because it's usually like people that they know or whatever. Right. Like some of the craziest bulk stuff is like, there are very big name coaches that would have guys taking like 200 milligrams of Anadrol before bed. And then like their actual other oral steroids that they would be taking is like, that's all their pre-workout orals and all this other nonsense. Yeah. Some of the craziest stuff is like 14 site injections every day. Like that's like every single muscle that you have is getting injected with some kind of a water-based compound. It, like you would need to be like Captain America, just sitting there and like letting two nurses just go through your whole body, for it to not take like 2 hours to do that every day. There's a level of like commitment and psychopathy, and somewhere between that is where like, the Olympians are.
No, for sure. There's a certain level of bodybuilding that's definitely a certain level of psychopathy.
Yeah, and even you know, some of the bigger accounts, they're starting to be a little bit more transparent with the doses. Where, you know, we have bodybuilders like Roman Fritz coming out and saying that he's taking 54 IUs of growth hormone a day, and you can't even fathom those numbers. That's like the number of vials that I have to go through just like loading 5 shots and then through it. It's just ridiculous.
That scares me alone from even just like what Durrah said about his 12 IUs. Well, his heart grow 2.5 millimeters.
It was 10 weeks on 6 IUs. He had heart enlargement. Is so ridiculous. I mean, you know, you look at that and you're like, well, geez, like what's going to happen if I like let my heart sit enlarged for long enough? Like when's the tipping point where I actually die? Yeah. And that's what he was talking about, where a lot of the mindset of the bodybuilders from his home country, it's not about the minimum effective dose. It's about the maximum tolerable dose. Like, what do I have to do to stay alive long enough to win the Olympia? And then I don't really care what happens to me.
That's why I think really just like awareness and knowledge is power. Because I remember when I first started, before I even started gear, I was fucking paranoid at the wazoo. I didn't like, that's why Durrah literally said I was running baby doses and that my highest bulking ever was dad cycle in fucking Egypt. Yeah. Is because like, you know, me not having, like, I didn't really have a coach when I was doing gear, so it was all my own experimentation. Yeah. And of course, because it's my body and I care about my life and all of these important things, I'm not gonna do Boston Loyd things. That's just not who I am. So all my shit was like, I was so paranoid that like my biggest cycles were like, I never even ran tests above 250. Yeah. I was doing like maximum, like I was like, you know, master on for 300 and then test at like 250 or test at 300 and just trying to look lean. Yeah. And you would look cool and like people would like be suspicious as you're running gear and stuff, but you would look pretty crazy. You just wouldn't look like a fucking, like you wouldn't look like you were about to step on stage. But yeah, like I think looking back now and thinking about how paranoid I was and thinking I was running those dosages thinking that I might still have a heart attack when I'm like 35 years old, and then realizing like I was actually nowhere even close to getting to. Well,
you never know. Like, I mean, obviously, people are way more sensitive than others.
That's true. There's so many people. Yeah, so many more. Yeah, people are way more sensitive than others, and then also there's so many more variables. Like, say that you added in other recreational drugs or anything like that, or like your genetics are prone to like your heart rates. But basically, aside from that, though, like considering the last 5 years and all the things that we've learned, I think you just after ingesting this knowledge consistently day by day, like say listening to like, not even this one, but like listening to, for example, just like Steve's podcast on a regular basis, you kind of start realizing where those like margins are that are actually either way higher or sometimes lower than you thought. Yeah. You know, and I think it just gives people a lot of good reassurance.
Yeah, for sure. It's so funny to me that like hypochondriacs will even like get into bodybuilding at all. It was really funny to hear that Durrah said that he's a hypochondriac, because for him to be like so worried about his health, but also be doing like, you know, four digit doses.
I know.
It's like so funny to me, because I have friends that are just like him. They talk like him. They you know, they're like, I got to get this scanned. I got to get this done. Like I have like my 4th echo this year at this time. It's like, dude, I think you're okay. But yeah, I mean, hey, if you've got the money for it, go for it. And you know, they're doing baby doses, obviously, because they don't want to push it. But then he's on the other side of things, like actually pushing it, but also neurotic about his health. I honestly think that's the best case to be in. Like,
right. I think for the fact that he wanted to be an Olympian open bodybuilder or 212 bodybuilder, that's exactly what you should be doing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like, you know, I'm small now. I've only been lifting for like 2 years, but like the goal for me is to be open division. And so I know what it takes. Like I know I'm going to be paying bigger price tags than other people. And it's like part of it's scary for sure, because it's like I want to like respect my body, and I know my life is going to change like when I have kids or when I get married or whatever. Yeah. But right now, like in this season of life,
this is what you want to accomplish.
Yeah, there's no like no limit to the gas pedal right there. So like, you know, my coach has put me on pretty big cycles as well, and it's going to be like a consistent progress thing as long as my blood work is healthy. Yeah, I have a really weird body genetically where like anything you put in me, I just like chew on it, like tank it out. So like basically every blood marker I've had has never been blown out. The only time I started having things like just out of range was when total weekly was like 2,200 milligrams a week. Okay. And so like, you know, I don't look like I'm on 2.2 grams, but it's a time game. So, you know, once I've been lifting for a certain amount of time, put enough food in my body, then yeah, you definitely hit those. Right. You start looking like the dosage.
I mean, I don't really think when anyone's like bulky and they have a lot of fat on, you look like your dosage.
No, never. I mean, unless you're like really big, then you can definitely tell. But what's funny is, and I had this conversation with someone else recently, I forget who, but I feel like there's this culture in the fitness industry where your physique justifies the doses. Where
it's annoying.
Yeah, well, exactly.
It doesn't make sense.
So you could look like, you know, peak off season, you have no abs visible, whatever, and it's like, what? This guy's running a gram? Like, that's ridiculous. He looks like trash, whatever. And then the opposite is like, you know, someone looks absolutely diced, shredded, whatever. And it's like, no one talks about his doses. Oh, like, wow, you look so great. Thumbs up. Hooray. And you start bringing blood work into the equation. It's not the blood work that justifies the doses. It's the physique. Everyone wants to care about who looks the best on social media. It's like, oh, we know he's running grams or whatever. Like, oh, we know he looks like this, whatever. When in reality, someone who doesn't really look like all that, but they're healthy and they're pushing their doses within what their body can handle, then definitely there's room for them to like keep doing that. It's sustainable for them. But someone who like looks sick, looks amazing, looks awesome, everyone in their comments is like reassuring them, like telling them you're doing the right thing, you're doing the right thing. It's reinforcing that they can do this, but their blood work's saying, dude, you need to chill out. Yeah. You're going to drop dead.
Right.
It's scary.
Yeah, it's definitely contradicting. If you feel like any of the medications that we spoke about today may benefit you, such as BPC 157, GH secretagogues such as Tesamorelin, IGF-1, oxandrolone troche, semaglutide, then you can obtain these from Transcend HRT, and the link for that will be in the bio. If you feel like you're experiencing symptoms of low testosterone, such as depression, anxiety, lack of motivation, as well as lack of sex drive, then you can get this checked out as well by getting your blood work done at Transcend, and they will provide you expert medical analysis. Transcend HRT has worked with many professional bodybuilders and pro athletes, such as Thor Bjornsson, Phil Heath, and Jeremy Buendia. And if you feel like this podcast has any relevancy to you, I do believe that this clinic will provide of great benefit to you as well. So going off of that with blood work and scary doses, what about Togi's third cycle?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about what you prescribed him and why, please.
So we titrated up. We started on TES and EQ. And the goal along the way was basically to have like one pit stop to check on how his body's reacting, like TES to EQ ratio. We found like, you know, the EQ may be a little bit lower than the testosterone. We gradually pushed things up like interval by interval, titrated up to about 2 grams grand total, testosterone, EQ. During that time, we had some other micro experiments. Tried out Tren. That was a no-go. Tried out Ment. That was a no-go.
How long was the Tren and Ment for?
Yeah, so the Tren was like, he dropped that within, I think it was, he didn't even get to 2 weeks. I think it was like a really short period of time. Like within just a couple of days, he was like, wasn't feeling so good, but he like kind of held himself back, like didn't text me. And then it got to a certain point, he texted me, he's like, Tanner, I'm losing my mind. Like you have a clip on your Instagram page about it where he's like, he texted me at some ungodly hour and was like losing his complete marbles over it. It's like, dude, it's fine. Just stop injecting it. I don't care. Like, I want you to be happy and healthy. I'm not trying to kill you here.
Your comment was hilarious.
Yeah. And then the Ment was a similar thing. It's like, he was on it for longer. The Ment was like probably 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks. And then it just got to a point where he's like, I don't know. I just like don't feel very good on it. Like, it's just not really doing anything for me. I was like, yeah, sure. It's fine. We'll cut it out. And then so towards the end of the cycle, we got him on a rotation. This was more of an experiment, and I talked to him about it before, and he's like, yeah, I want to try it, where we were doing Superdrol and Anadrol rotating, and then we started doing them together. And then there's a hysterical clip where he's on vacation and he's like, oh, I don't have my dropper for the Anadrol. I'm just going to like put it in a spoon and then take it. Well, he didn't realize that when you draw in like a syringe, it looks bigger than it is because the syringe is really dense. Like the plastic is really dense. So he filled the spoon with like probably like 3, 4, 5x like what I was prescribing him for Anadrol. And he went out and drank, and he was doing Superdrol.
Jesus Christ.
And he like thought he was going to die the next day. He was fine. But you know, if he did that sustainably, yeah, no, it's not good. The grand total cycle was something like 24 weeks, I believe. And he's really good about his supplements. Like, at least when he was here talking with you about it, like he talks about like ezetimibe. He's taking his ezetimibe religiously. He's on top of his blood pressure medication. He's taking his telmisartan. He needs a lot of it. Like, you know, I normally would never give someone like 160 milligrams of telmisartan.
Oh,
but
damn.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
But like,
bro, I'm on baby telmisartan right now.
Right.
I actually need to up my dose, but
well, yeah, you're talking to your doctor about it. He's trying to switch to losartan and amlodipine.
No, he tried to just start me at losartan, but I started low, obviously because of the dehydration, and I'm on prep. And he didn't want me to have dehydration while I was on prep. He wanted me to adjust to the telmisartan first, and that makes all the sense. Yeah. So obviously the telmisartan is going to increase, but I'm literally on 20 milligrams right now. Yeah. Literally minimum dose.
Right. So, I mean, I honestly think your body's just like made the adaptations. Like, you're in a good spot. When I'm dealing with a younger body that is still like low key freaking out that there's all these androgens in its system, it just has no idea what to do with it. And you have to like kind of teach it towards whatever, you know, you want it to be. Because Chase Irons, I don't know, you've seen his videos and stuff where he's like the 5 gram guy. He's on 5 grams of gear a week, and he only needs like a little dose of a angiotensin receptor blocker, and he's at like 110 over 70 for his blood pressure. That's awesome. On 5 grams, which is like unheard of.
You don't remember what his dose is, right? For the ARB, or what the ARB is?
Oh, it's less than 3 digits for sure. I feel like it is. I gotta talk to him again sometime. Yeah. But like, bottom line for Shane was we basically just, he's like, this is my like last hurrah. You know, maybe I'll hit you up in the future and like do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but we're not really doing any more cycles. So I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll push you. I'm not gonna kill you, but I'll push you. And then that's what we did. So you can even see like the blood work that he posted afterwards. And, you know, it's not perfect, but for a first exposure to 2 grams, you know, any bodybuilder would look at that and be like, yeah, it's kind of like what my blood work looked like when I was doing this.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's just a lot of times that they want to point fingers and say, oh, look at this kid. He doesn't know what he's doing. Like, why is he doing this? But, you know, go to their archives on LabCorp and see what they clocked in it.
So what was all the stuff? What was all the compounds?
Test EQ. That was throughout the entire time. We had Tren in there. That was like, 2 weeks. Ment in there, maybe 2-4 weeks. And then towards the end of the cycle, that was the Anadrol and Superdrol. That was probably held on there for like 6-8 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long was the cycle total?
Like 24 weeks.
24 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
24 weeks of the test and EQ.
Yeah. And so we hit peak dosage probably like 10-12 weeks before the end of the cycle. I had him on that for like probably another like 2.5 months ish. So he was on 2,000 milligrams for 2 months plus ish. And then roughly around that time, we added in the Anadrol and the Superdrol, and he was looking sick. He was feeling good. Learned a lot about what steroids he likes and what he doesn't like. I'm wondering if he's going to like do EQ cruises now because he loves it so much. It'll be very interesting.
How did he notice that his physique changed whenever he added the Anadrol and Superdrol?
Yeah, so you talked a little bit about it in your cast, but he honestly was like, I didn't do this cycle justice. Like, I was not as dialed on my diet as I was during my second cycle. Like, it goes to show, like, if you don't have the like fundamentals down, no amount of gear is going to do anything for you.
Yeah.
This was the point at which, like, he kind of like reached peak fame and was like really blowing up. And so he's like doing the big cycle, but also at the same time, he's traveling, he's gambling, he's taking girls out on dates and eating out and drinking and whatever, doing blow all the time. Like, it's not really a bodybuilder lifestyle at all. And so I would probably argue that he made more gains on his second cycle than he did on his third.
Yeah.
You know, he did get good fullness out of the Anadrol, but really, as far as cosmetics go, the Superdrol is just too good for him. The amount of like water that it holds in the muscle and just like the graininess, his skin basically looks like it has like a real life Adobe filter applied over it all the time. So freaky.
Have you noticed that that has a similar like look and change with most of your clients when they're doing Anadrol and Superdrol?
Yeah, so it's kind of become like my trade secret, basically, where any of my clients that are like, a lot of the guys that I work with, they're all Instagram guys. They really need to look sick for a photo. Like, they need to look disgusting. So what ends up happening is like, I'll start slipping them onto the
fucking
Superdrol.
Instagram guys.
Yeah. Well, you know, no, if you're a real bodybuilder and you trust me to do your cycle, I feel bad for you. Like, please don't do that. You don't find someone with experience, you know, that I'll be the first to admit that. Right. But if you're an Instagram guy, like, hey, you got some followers, you know, that's basically where I'm at. But like David Rao, you can imagine like what he looks like in your head, where he has like really grainy veins, unbelievable all over his entire body. And a lot of that is the Superdrol.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's always interesting to hear because, you know, most people like to use Superdrol for like strength or for like a bulking cycle.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't have as much experience seeing people using Superdrol for like a cut.
Yeah. So the main reason that I like injectable so much is because I think there's a tipping point, like with oral, that the body just stops handling it. And it hits that like toxicity point before you see the real benefits of it. So with the injectable, your body can handle it for a lot more and with bigger doses, so that you push past that point that you normally like, dude, I got to stop. I feel like I'm dying every day with the oral Superdrol. And you go into this like realm of freakazoid territory where everything just looks crazier and crazier on a day by day basis. And so you want to hold someone there until you realize like, all right, we're hitting the tipping point. The glutathione, the NAC, the TUDCA, the milk thistle, it's not doing anything anymore. We're going to take a break now.
Yeah. The glutathione, baby. Yeah. Let's go.
It's good stuff.
I said this in the podcast before and it was so fucking funny because I was just like, oh, like if you're fucking a raver, then, you know, you should fucking...
I tell guys that all the time.
That shit fucking popped off, but all the comments were hilarious because, of course, everyone was thinking I'm just covering up using drugs with more drugs. But
well,
of course, you know that's how it goes.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, that's how all the normies like to judge bodybuilding. They have to use more medications.
Yeah, just a bunch of drugs
to cover their blood pressure and other things. For that's what we do. But okay, so last, I'm trying to remember exactly what I was going to ask about the third cycle. So you guys, oh, it was about Greg. Yeah, dude. Do you know that Greg is about to like tear up Togi for his blood work? Did you see that at all? Yeah, he is. He commented on his last video of Togi that he just filmed a video on Togi's blood work and how horrendous it was and whatever shit or whatever, and that'll come out in a week. So and I don't think it's posted yet, which means it's probably going to come out any day now. Right,
and it'll be good to see. I have mixed feelings about Greg. Like even Kyle Wilkes came out and like made.
I saw that.
You watched the whole thing. Yeah. There's reasons to feel this way or that way, but it's the same with like any character in our industry. Like if you meet these guys behind the scenes, they're pretty nice. They're pretty reasonable. I'm sure if I meet Greg at the Olympia this year, he'll be like, oh, you know, I would have done this differently. I would have done that differently, but he'll be nice about it.
Yeah.
But it's views. So
yeah,
like he's going to be harsher on it than like real bodybuilders would be. And the point I was making earlier is the same thing. Is like, if you find a bodybuilder that's like doing the similar doses and they post their blood work, like, you know, they're going into stage prep or whatever, then their blood work is going to look pretty similar. But if you keep in mind that Togi is like doing coke and like eating completely off plan,
right,
and like Taco Bell and whatever every night, like it's just such a nightmare. I told him, obviously I'm going to tell my clients like, hey, you should probably eat a healthy diet and not do drugs every day. And at a certain point it was so bad.
Oh, shit.
Shane's in my text messages like, listen, bro, like, I know you came clean of coke. Like, can you teach me how? Like, can you actually help me, like, come clean? I'm like, yeah, I'll help you. Like, will you actually come clean? He's like, well, I'm still going to be doing Adderall. So, like,
damn, that's crazy. The Coke Taco Bell diet is crazy.
Yeah, dude, it's like sorority girl diets when I was back in college. Coke Taco Bell. It's like one Doritos Logos taco
shit, where's the cap?
for the rest of the day. Skinny.
But I think you're right. I know Greg met him in person. He's definitely a lot more calm and he's more cordial. He's more cordial in person for sure. So
yeah, absolutely.
The way that I see their personalities is like freaking Togi is like the fraternity bro that doesn't give a fuck about his life, and then Greg is the Karen of the fitness industry. That's just, the personality just makes sense. Both of them, honestly. So much conflict. Yeah,
they're always going to butt heads.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good. It's good content for everybody who likes to watch that stuff.
That's funny. So, in regards to trying not to die by 40 if you're running gear, what are the top 5 things you would have someone do? Obviously, aside from not taking it at all, because we know people aren't going to do that. That are taking gear.
All right. So the assumption is that you're taking gear. Let's use the metaphor of like you're on a motorcycle, right? How fast are you going? And then the question is like, okay, well, I'm going to go 200 miles an hour on the freeway. I'm going to be weaving between cars. Yeah, dude, you're going to die at some point. Like your chance of dying is dramatically higher. Whereas like someone who's like being respectful, abiding by traffic laws, whatever. So we have these like kind of two different scenarios. No matter what, you obviously could be in danger. I would argue that if someone's doing TRT doses, we do have studies that suggest that like even up to doses like maybe 250, 300 milligrams a week, there's no difference in mortality. So like that, we'll leave that aside. Like that's, the actual dad doses, not like Durrah saying that they all take 500.
This is the dad dose. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll say like you're taking average, moderate bodybuilder doses. Like maybe you want to compete in men's physique or classic or whatever, and you don't want to die. 2 most important things, in my opinion. You got to manage your blood pressure. You got to manage your cholesterol. That's like the one thing that's in front of you right now, no matter how early you are or how late you are in the game, you have to keep those in check. Absolutely. So what do we do to that end? For blood pressure, there's like a laundry list of things we could do. Mildest, tadalafil, 5 milligrams a day, 10 milligrams a day. Then we have things like beta blockers. If you do have a resting heart rate that's elevated. So we're talking about nebivolol. We're talking about propranolol. Then we could also get down into the actual blood pressure medications. So we're talking about angiotensin receptor blockers, telmisartan, losartan, valsartan, irbesartan. There's a bajillion of those. ACE inhibitors, those are also options. Enalapril, lisinopril. Even to a certain point, diuretics, because if you do have too much water retention, that's going to be hard on the heart. So there's a fat list there. I'm just going to compress that into one item, which is like control your blood pressure. Second point, control your cholesterol, where it's like, okay, what do we do to control the cholesterol? Make sure that you're eating a diet that is agreeable to your body. If you're completely eating junk all day, like, oh, bro, I'm dirty bulking, don't worry about it. Like, yeah, it's going to mess you up at a certain point. So you need to stay on top of that. Ezetimibe is one of the best ways to do that. Super innocuous. There's cardiologists that want to put ezetimibe in the U.S. drinking water supply. Like, it's that safe. So I'm agreeable to taking ezetimibe. I don't care, like, how good or how bad your cholesterol parameters are. If you're running gear, it's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
And then we have more extreme options for cholesterol. Extreme, but in the sense of like more aggressive, there's like slightly more side effect risks. Statins, so rosuvastatin, pitavastatin, those things could be used if you need them. And then we start talking about other markers that are like relevant. They play a role. You should definitely keep them controlled, but it's not like life or death situations. Like blood glucose, you don't want to end up with diabetes. Nobody wants that. Mm-hmm. So you want to control your blood glucose, especially if you're running growth hormone or growth hormone secretagogues like MK677, ipamorelin, CJC, all the peptides that are popular now. So what do we do to control blood glucose? And you just go down the laundry list again. And so it's like every little thing that we notice is like, okay, well, if this is out of range down the line, we need to do something about it. And so, that if I was to put 5 markers there, blood glucose, probably number 3. Then number 4, I think these are kind of like in chronological order, like down the line, later on in life, you're going to like every 3, 4, 5 years, maybe like every 5 years, you got to do like ultrasound screening, get your organ imaging done.
I actually would have thought less time, but 5 years you think is sufficient?
So it depends, right? Because there's a lot of broke bodybuilders out there. They will have to save like 5 years.
That is true. Shit can be expensive, especially if you do the Prenuvo scan. That's like 3 to 4K.
Yeah,
alone.
Right. Which is,
but it is a nice juicy scan though.
Yeah, it's a juicy one. Yeah, it's a lot better than the like standard type of screening that they do. And if you're an if you're an influencer and you do the stuff that we do, like we have the money. There's really no excuse to be spending your money on like expensive things. I don't want to name anything because then people are going to think I'm talking about that. I'm not. I just like
Coke.
Yeah. No. Okay. Have you ever seen Shane post his bank accounts?
No, I haven't.
He posted one of his Amex cards as a negative $20,000. His bank account was negative 20K. He had like a fat balance in his Amex he had to pay. He's like, guys, don't worry, I'll gamble. I'll pay this off. And he's mostly joking. He has other accounts, but it's exactly what you're talking about, where it's like the timeline is going to be unfortunately a little bit affected by budget. Where it's like, we have the money, we can obviously get that done. But like the thing is if you have the money for something, you could just like imaging and blood work. If you had the money, you could get blood work every single day for the rest of your life. I mean, you would run out of blood at a certain point, but like, it would be cool. It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Same with organ imaging. If you have the money, you can just get organ imaging done like 4 times a year. But are you really going to see that big of a difference from like Q1 to Q2 to Q3? Probably not.
Yeah.
So it's all on a sliding scale. I put it like reasonably because I'm trying to think of the audience that I'm talking to. Best case scenario, every 3 years they could probably do that. Worst case scenario, like I know there's guys out there that are hurting and they're just like struggling. Like they live with their mom and they're living the full bodybuilding lifestyle. Like Seth Ferosa used to do that. And then year 5, then they can maybe like have enough money to scrape together and be like, am I okay?
Yeah.
And then they have maybe another 5 years of bodybuilding and then another 5 years of bodybuilding. And then at least they get like 3 checkups throughout their entire career and see if they're going to make it or not. I think honestly, it's like those ones are the biggest ones that I could really think of.
Yeah.
And then I would actually say mental health is probably the other big one.
Oh yeah.
If your mental's not right, you have to stop. I don't care what cycle or what protocol your coach gave you. You don't listen to them. You got to change it. Yeah.
I agree with that as well. Was mental health the 5th one? Because it wasn't organ imaging 4th?
Yeah, it was kind of all over the place. But yeah, let's say the organ imaging is 4th and then like mental health is 5th. But like mental health is always there. Like it's right in front of your face all the time.
Right. Cool. I really like that. That was actually probably the most structured way that anyone has ever answered that question.
I feel like you ask a lot of people that question. I didn't prepare that or anything. I just like that's the way that my mind approaches every issue.
No, yeah, I've noticed that in your content too, which is really cool. Is why I really enjoy your content. It's very structured and
I appreciate
it's very easy to digest for
yeah, because like I feel like some gear educators like they come at it like they're the PhDs of the industry.
Yeah,
but not everyone has like PhD level knowledge. Like I don't want to sit in a lecture, bro. Just
right, exactly. I think I mean honestly, from their perspective, I think it's just fun to talk about everything that you know, especially if you have the vocabulary to do so. Not talking about anybody specifically, more placement rates or Chris Williamson, but I
was thinking Alex Kiekel, but he's crazy.
But honestly, yeah, if you can like put it into layman's terms for people, it seems like they appreciate it so much more. So, which is why it's easier for me because I'm not nearly as smart as people like more placement, not even close. So it's just way easier for me to talk.
You have the same curiosity.
It's me.
Like you still like want to know about this stuff. So
it's the main reason for the podcast is learning and knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. You don't have to hold back on the questions either. I don't care if you give me a hard one.
Okay, cool, perfect. Because these are not my questions anyway, so I don't hold any responsibility.
Yeah.
There's a fuck ton of these questions though, so we'll just ask away. But unfortunately, we only have like 15 minutes left, so I'll have to pick.
You want me to like rapid fire, do like quick ones, or you want me to do a couple good ones?
It's up to you. I mean, you can try to rapid fire. No,
you pick them. You pick them. You know.
No, that's what I'm saying is like answer wise, you can rapid fire answer. Okay. But if you have like some good ways to go deep into it, just go ahead. Like honestly, don't even overthink it. Yeah. Just do whatever. But it's a good thing that you got a lot of questions. So
that's awesome.
Shows that the podcast will be nice. Antonio asks, how many 15-year-olds are in your DMs asking about MK677 on the daily?
It's like a billion of them. I want to put it in perspective. I get more DMs every day than I can humanly answer, even if I worked like a 40-hour work week. There's just no way.
That's kind of awesome though. That's cool. Your content.
Yeah, it's cool. It's very engaging. I wish I could respond to all of them and tell them that they're stupid, but I can't. So go read my FAQ. It's a frequently asked question. I'm 15. Can I use MK? I have an FAQ in my bio. It will answer that question for you.
Have you, what are your thoughts about MK677?
It's good for increasing appetite for sure. I think some people will use it as a countermeasure to enclomiphene because enclomiphene can lower IGF-1 levels, and so they'll try to combine them like that. Mm-hmm. So it's like the best like half natty stack is like Enclo and MK.
Half natty, awesome.
Yeah,
fantastic. But how do you compare MK to like CJC, Ipamorelin, Tesamorelin?
They're all like playing in the kiddie pool, you know. Mm-hmm. Like, it's really not going to do anything until you actually get on growth hormone. Okay.
I personally just am not a fan of MK. Like I would definitely choose like Tessa or IPA over MK any day, to be honest. But also I'm not one of the people that needs a big increase in appetite. So I can understand for the appetite reasons, but if like appetite isn't a thing where you need an increase in appetite, I just feel like it's not as effective. And there's a lot of other side effects that just aren't as
Do you get hunger from Ipamorelin?
Not really.
Okay.
At least not that I've noticed.
I've seen it go back and forth, so I was curious.
MK makes me feel like fucking death, though, especially if I'm taking a full dose.
Yeah.
20 milligrams, bro.
It's awesome.
It's awesome.
I come from skinny boy hell, so I need it. Yeah.
You're just like in that fucking rest and digest always. Like, I need to eat. Fucking just, it's just, I can't do it, man. I can't. But also, I need to be on the go like 24/7. So I know we were talking about like our differences in our schedules, and I like right after leg day, I should be in rest and digest. But instead, today after leg day, I went straight to do a cold ass shower to like wake myself up even more, get my dopamine rushing. Yeah, for the podcast, drink some caffeine.
You could be like half asleep over there. We'd make it entertaining somehow. I don't care.
I could, but dude, my brain doesn't work.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have ADD, so like I need to like be on top of my dopamine levels and make sure I'm healthy and I'm well slept for me to work normally, if that makes sense.
That's fine.
But Melissa Lifts asks, have Togi's activities outside of using gear negatively reflected on you as a coach?
Ooh, actually, they've gotten me more clients, which is kind of unfortunate. I don't really want to be I can do coke and blast gear if this guy coaches me guy. I don't really know if I want to be that, but like if you are gonna do that, I'll still help you no matter what. Like,
right.
Of course, step one of helping you is, hey, don't do that anymore. But if they don't listen, I can't stop them.
Yeah.
I think honestly, a lot of like professional, like a lot of people who are like in the bodybuilding world, they think like pro bodybuilders like hate me and like I'm just like the problem, like everything that's wrong with the industry. Dude, like I could name like 24 IFBB pros that follow me and really like me. Like Vigorous Steve really likes me. Like all the educators, they like me. Fair enough. Some of them they not so much, but like, you know, if these guys like me and you look up to them, by extension, maybe look up to me like a tiny bit and then it's fine. But yeah, I think the whole Togi thing is a very interesting mark on my resume for sure.
I'm so curious which ones don't like you. Is this something?
Let's not say don't like, but there's certain people where it's like I'm mutuals with all of their friends, but then like this one person won't follow me. Okay. And I have a reason to believe it's just because like I don't have the experience, which is fine. Like I see. But in like, 5-10 years, they'll probably follow me. So
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. Industry's weird like that. And some people will just not follow people just because maybe they're not as big enough or something. And
or they have grudges or weird things.
Silly.
It's whatever.
Nestor asks, ask him how he talked to Sam Sulek about his gear use and dosages.
Oh, I said I was fully transparent. Okay. I'll say this. Sam Sulek and I used to be mutuals on TikTok, and there were messages sent. Out of respect for him, I don't want to say anything more. And that's like in confidence with him. Mm-hmm. Not like because I'm not being transparent, I'm hiding things from you. But
yeah, right.
If Sam hits me up and is like, it's fine, you can go tell everybody, then I'll go tell everybody, but there's nothing to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lonan asks, craziest cycle you've ever prescribed a client?
Togis. Chains. Yeah. That's the craziest one that I've ever given someone.
Awesome.
I've written cycles for people, like first cycles that they were very aggressive as like a maybe, but they didn't run them.
Okay.
So I guess that doesn't count.
Will Jr. asks, gear stack for BJJ competitors.
Ooh, combat sports. All right. This is a fun one. So when you're in a combat sport, and this is something that's like widely discussed, Vigorous Steve already has a video on this. So if you want like full discussion about it, go watch Steve's video. But one thing that I would add in on top of everything that he discusses, he talks about like Turnaball versus Anavar, like which one makes sense depending on your fighting style. Cause actually people will fight a little bit differently within like the meta of however you fight anyway. I would argue that cognitive boosting is one of the most important things you can do. So Semax and Sulek are major, primarily Semax. Semax is gonna be a little bit more stimulating. So one example is I have had clients who are like race car drivers, like they drive cars professionally, not like at high levels. Like I'm not, coaching crazy popular people, but Semax at very high doses, I'm talking like 4 digits of Semax in micrograms, every single race or fight or whatever, or sparring session, you are locked in. Every little thing, every little decision making, it's a lot faster. That is the make or break of winning a fight, is quicker decision making. If you're sloppy and like you see the opponent twitch and you don't register that as like, oh, he's about to throw a left hook, you're done. You're cooked.
Okay. What are the side effects of that?
Semax is really innocuous. I haven't seen any issues with it yet. I think with Sulek, it's a little bit more like relaxing. And so that could be a downside, as in like you might feel sleepy. But you can basically think of Semax as like lube for your brain. So like imagine you want your brain to work like a well-oiled machine. That's the oil. Whereas like if it's a little bit clunky and just like things are a little bit rigid, it's not going to move as well. The exact thing it's doing is it's increasing this thing called BDNF, brain derived neurotrophic factor. And that's what we want more of in order to just like lubricate everything, make it all flow as efficiently as possible.
So why isn't it as popular? You know,
because the peptide world is just widely understudied. And so it's been really cool to be like in a space. Like I basically got most of my popularity on the internet by talking about peptides and saying like, hey, here's a tool. Here's how it could fit into your life. And people are like, whoa, wait, no way. I didn't even know that existed. So it's basically just like ways that you integrate all these peptides in. Like I think at a certain point, every person is going to be enhanced.
Yeah.
I would even argue right now, every person is like slightly enhanced. Everyone takes like vitamin D pills or vitamin C pills or whatever. It's an enhancement. You normally would not have that in your body, but for implementation in your diet or something. And then peptides become something even greater. Like MOTS-C is something that we lose as we age, but you could just supplement with it and you get more energy into your older age. Like that old adage where it's like when you're young, you have time and energy, but no money. When you're middle-aged, you have money and energy, but no time. And when you're old, you have time and money, but no energy. Well, you add MOTS-C, now you have all three.
Yeah.
Look at that.
I've been considering implementing NAD plus more as I grow older and older as well.
Steve's entrepreneur stack includes a good deal of NAD plus. If there's a infusion place, probably there is in LA. Start going there. Start getting infusions of that.
Transcend luckily has the injectable, so I have that as well. But my doctor also offered like I can also bring the vial to him, and he can give it.
Do IVs for you.
Oh, yeah, so it's pretty cool. My doc is pretty dope, dude. It fucking takes a while, but as a bodybuilder, you know, you want to find a guy that's gonna fucking respect you and not judge you for doing bodybuilding. So I got really lucky. Obviously, I didn't have a good doctor. I didn't have any doctors really that I could talk to for like a good like 4 years or something. But then moving to LA and then first clinic, and the guys randomly like, yeah, I work with bodybuilders all the time. I'm like, this is fucking sick.
Sweet.
So yeah. But I do recommend, like, if you're someone doing bodybuilding and you're doing competitions, that like try to ask around to like your friends that are in the gym and stuff, just like as much as you can,
network,
to find a doctor that you can just feel comfortable with. I think that's like the most important thing, honestly.
Yeah.
At least he'll like be able to help you decide on which of the ARBs and shit that you want to take, you know, because there's fucking hundreds. You just had me thinking, I got my genetics. I got my results from 23andMe and put it into Prometheus. So I've figured it out, or at least I got the results of a lot of what my genetic predispositions are. And one of the cool ones was, I'm trying to remember what the name of it was, but basically said I had the gene to be more calm and collected, and it's like what is more prominent in MMA fighters, because there's like a little bit of less, because the response time and just like action and reaction is just, I think as someone who is more calm, it just seems to be more proficient in something like MMA fighting. So kind of like what you were suggesting with that compound. Seems like, I wonder if it'll like, if it's something that would benefit me as much as someone else.
Yeah, I wonder. It's probably the same reason like halotestin doesn't make you a raging freak. Like you're just calm naturally. Yeah,
probably. Just high estrogen does.
That's the other issue.
Well, Junior asks, what do you recommend as a base for someone who aromatizes a lot from test?
I mean, it's just your choice about how you want to control it. So as he says, as a base, like your testosterone is the base. If you want to create a better balance in your body, you have a couple options where it's like use an AI-like compound, something that has downward pressure on estrogen. We're talking about Masteron or Primo or EQ, depending on your genetics and your personal preferences. Or you can just use an AI. And that's also personal preference. Like some people read certain studies and just get scared of them. And if you're scared of them, dude, I'm not going to force you to take an AI. You know, just do Masteron. If you can sleep at night because you take Masteron and testosterone, it's awesome. Do it.
Mirko Segvich asks, would test affect your thyroid in any way that could cause hypothyroidism?
So I'll be honest. I'll say thyroid is one of the areas of gear study where I'm not super well versed. It's not a place that I've done a huge rabbit hole on. So like pass is my answer. I would say on average, like when people get on testosterone, I don't typically see thyroid issues pop up.
I don't either.
Yeah.
The only time I've ever seen it related is someone's jumping on test and they either decide to like go on a diet because they're on test and now they think they can cut extra hard, then their thyroid crashes. That's
completely fails. Yeah.
Timmy Sinton asks, do we measure from the butthole or from the upper side of the shaft to gauge length?
You can't. You're including your taint in the length of what? All right, we got some fun questions.
That's fucking sick. McGarish asks, essential health support stack for people on gear for 80 to 90% of benefits.
Just what we talked about earlier when you asked me about the top 5. Rewind. Yeah. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think that's good. iBeast asks any/all info on L-carnitine injections and B12 injections. iBeast
is one of Boston's clients.
Oh, wow. Nice.
I'm almost 90% sure that's the same guy. He's asking about advice on L-carnitine injections.
Mm-hmm.
Like where to inject it? No,
he was just asking about info on L-carnitine injections and B12 injections. There was another question on L-carnitine, which might be better because it's more specific, but...
Yeah. I mean, as far as the injections of L-carnitine, I'd say like the newest thing that I've picked up on is that there's kind of no upper limit of L-carnitine that you can put in your body. So like if you're willing to load a 3 cc full of L-carnitine and shoot it every day, you could. And you actually will get more benefits out of it. I mentioned him earlier. Alex Keekel is currently doing it. There's a lot of things he does that are very crazy and out there, but they're worth looking at least just for experimentation purposes. And I tried it one time. I was like, yeah, let's see how comfortable an injection of that is, and it's actually totally fine. 3 cc into the delt, no problem.
Yeah, I do 2 cc's.
Yeah,
before my fasted cardio. When is the best time, or when is your favorite time to inject your L-carnitine?
Before activity. So before fasted cardio.
Any activity?
Yeah. You notice that you sweat more on it? I personally do.
I've been going to the Young LA gym and it's been so fucking hot, so I sweat every time.
Yeah, that's true.
I did take L-carnitine before going to the last festival. That was kind of cool. I don't know how long it lasts. Do you know how long it should technically last if you're doing injectable?
I don't know. No, I don't know the half-life off the top of my head.
Yeah.
No.
So I was just hoping that it was going to last at least for a good first half of the event. Sure. But yeah, basically just went there, smoked a little bit of weed, fucking ran around, danced. Fucking woke up 3 pounds lower the next day. Fantastic, bro. Fucking sick. I smuggled my protein powder in there too, so I dry scoop the protein powder every 3 hours. We're good.
Nice. Dang.
Protein synthesis.
Dry scooping protein actually sounds disgusting.
We had water. It was just mixed in your mouth. You know what I mean? It's like not totally dry scooping. It's just like you don't have a cup. So
okay, all right.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, whatever it takes. Except bigger doses. I was doing baby doses.
That's going to change now, though, all because of Durrah. All thanks to Durrah. So,
Durrah's.
Yeah, you guys can expect me trying 750 test by my next cycle.
Hooray.
Or next bulk. My next bulk.
Baby's first gram.
Baby's first gram. We both know this guy. I'm Kepri asks, what made you get into gear information and what was the biggest hurdle when first starting?
I love this question. And he's I'm not going to say his real name, but yeah, he's like one of my best friends. I walked into this is the same reason I started wanting to lift anyway. My roommate at the time loved working out, whatever. I walked into my living room one day and on the TV is a gigantic black dude in a purple spandex little mankini. And I looked at that and I was like, what in the world do I have to do to look like that? Like, I don't know why that was my reaction when I first saw it. It was Ronnie Coleman during one of his Olympia routines. And I was just blown. He hit the Atlas pose where like he got low and then spread like this. You can see his traps like cascading over his shoulders. Look like a mountain range. It's unbelievable.
I know what you're talking about.
And at the time I was like, I kind of know like that steroids are a thing, but I don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
So immediately I'm like scouring forums and trying to find people and talk to people about stuff. And eventually I got to a point where I thought I knew enough. And I mentioned it to one of my buddies and he had a mutual friend that was like actually a lifter, like was enhanced to everything. I'd never met him, but I told him, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do like DECA and D-ball for my first cycle. And he's like, okay, I mean, I don't know what that means. I'll go ask my friend. He asks him, he comes back and he's like, yeah, so my buddy said you need to do a lot more research. And that was like a earth shattering moment where I was like, oh, I thought it was really easy, but this is actually way more complicated.
Yeah.
And that's when I went crazy. Like I basically took gear education like another class in college. I still have the notebooks I have of like taking notes like it was a college class of like watching more places.
So like while you were in college, you were
I would go home from classes and I would start studying
on the computer, on the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What did you look up? Aside from the more plates, more dates videos.
Yeah, so I started with like more plates, more dates videos, and then he'd mention or like show on screen the studies, like back in his really old videos.
Okay.
And then I would pull them up and I'd realize like, oh, like PubMed has this wealth of studies all over the place. Like this is really cool. And then Leo and Longevity, I figured out him. He mentioned Sci-Hub. Sci-Hub allows you to look like at the full study instead of just like locked abstracts that you have to pay for.
Yeah.
So then I got access to all of these full studies and I'm like reading every little thing under the sun, taking notes on all of it, like realizing how it's all connected. Yeah. And then obviously like relying on my mentors at the time to help me learn these things. And then I actually requested a book at my library, they had the initial William Llewellyn anabolics book. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's a very like an old resource for bodybuilders. And I like read that thing like it was the Bible. I took so many notes on it. And then it wasn't until like I had all of this information in front of me. And then I started kind of building my own philosophy off of all the things I learned. And that, it was around the time that I was building my own philosophy that I started getting connected to my mentors, which was the coolest thing ever. Like, you know, to have Vigorous Steve be like, hey, I like your stuff. Like, come on the podcast.
Yeah.
And it was funny because Steve initially was like, what? This guy's using pictures of me in his videos. Like, what the hell is this? And then you realize, wait a second, he's giving me free promo. I like this guy. And then we ended up becoming friends.
What does Steve think this
is?
What does Steve think? Steve, I'm not taking shots this time.
This time? When did you take shots at?
No, he just wants me to take, it's a game. We take a shot every time I say Steve or Vigorous Steve on the podcast. Because I talk about Steve like every single podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he knows I love him.
Yeah, no, I got to get back on his podcast, actually. I felt so bad because when I was first on there, I had no equipment whatsoever. I had like Apple earbuds as my only equipment, and it was so crappy. I felt so bad. Yeah. And then we talked afterwards, and he's like, how much do you charge for your consults? And I told him, he's like, holy crap. You're almost making more money than me, dude.
I know shit. That's awesome.
Okay. No, he's way more advanced than me. Just as far as his consults go, he charges like what, $12.50 or something for a consult.
Oh, damn. Yeah. Wow.
Or $7.50? I don't know. I'm lying, Steve. I'm sorry. Forgive me.
Ty Lurkin asks, what are the first steps you give clients when they're about to cycle for the first time?
Blood work. So I walk them through blood work first, and I walk them through it in a way where I'm hoping to teach them how to read blood work. So call by call, they're going to slowly understand, okay, this blood work means this means this, whatever. Like, these are my liver enzymes. They're getting the basics of it, right? I'm trying to teach them how to fish instead of just giving them a fish. Like, here you go, here's dinner today. I don't want them relying on me. I want them to be self-sufficient. Then the next part is I want them to understand what they're going into. The number one thing I say when guys are looking to do a first cycle is be gentle with yourself. There's going to be a lot of things changing about your body. A lot of them are going to be good. A lot of them are going to be bad. You got to be prepared for all of it. And then, you know, obviously the rest of it is just like the logistics of here's what we're going to do.
Noah asks how to pull Varbies, asking for a friend, by the way.
Yeah, I don't even know how I pulled my girlfriend, dude.
Varbies.
Dude, the funniest thing with her is
her neck tat is sick, by the way. I saw her on your Instagram when I was
So
peeping your Instagram.
I found her scrolling on TikTok. I saw her. I was like, immediately the first video popped up. I was like, I have such a crush on this girl. She's never going to know that I exist. And like, I liked it. I followed her, whatever. I kept scrolling, whatever. Somehow, some way, she and I eventually ended up becoming mutuals. And then like we met in person, and then like the rest is history.
Okay, so mutuals was like one of your friends were friends with her, and then
no, mutuals like as in on TikTok, we followed each other.
Oh, you just followed each other on TikTok.
I would comment on her stuff sometimes and just like say nice stuff about like how her physique is progressing, and then eventually she was just like looked at my page and was like, I guess this guy's cute, and followed me back. And I was like, what like, what do you see in me? What are you talking about?
Yeah. Then how did you guys meet?
So Research M, which is my main peptide brand, we had a meetup in Texas, and I asked her, I was like, hey, do you want to come on this trip as a prospect? Like, you know, you have a really big following. Would you want to be open about like peptide use and stuff, and like start being transparent, because women don't get that ever? And she's like, yeah, it sounds actually really cool. And so she came out, and then she and I clicked, and we just like kept talking ever since then. Damn. Asked her to be my girlfriend. Like, the rest is history.
It's fucking sick, bro.
Yeah, I know. It's actually crazy.
How long have you guys been together now?
6 months.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I know.
Congrats. That's fucking sick, bro. We have hope. We have hope for the Barbies.
We have hope for the Barbies. Don't give up. Consistency. Never give up.
Shout out to my Barbie out there. You know who you are.
No, isn't she natty?
No, yeah, you're right.
Ah, darn. Eventually. Maybe. Eventually. We have hope still.
You hate this. All right. Love you guys. We're out of time. Thank you guys. Thanks for being on this podcast, bro. That was pretty sick.
That was fun.
That was honestly a fuck ton of information in 2 hours.
Yeah. I vomited on you there. So
give on me any day, bro.
Clip that. Okay.
Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram. That is at tanner.tattered. You'll find my super link there that has links to everything that I do, including my consult calls, my FAQ, which is a gigantic resource for free. I don't even ask for your email, because I think that paywalling life-saving information is stupid. So you can go read that. And my TikTok keeps getting banned, so I just have Instagram right now. So tanner.tattered.
Nice. Fuck yeah. Thanks for watching, guys. Follow this guy, Tanner Tattered. What's Tattered from?
It's a quote. The fallen angel learns to love her tattered wings. It's about accepting your flaws.
Oh, okay. Nice. So fucking deep, bro. Wow.
Yeah, philosophy minor, so just fake deep, bro.
Do we got to know what your actual last name is, or is that a secret?
When I compete, it'll be public.
Okay,
Like, also,
nice.
it's not really well hidden. Like, if you search enough, you'll like find my LinkedIn from college, and it's like, oh, that's his last name.
All right, everybody, go look up his LinkedIn.
Oh gosh.
All right, cool. Follow Tanner. Love you guys. Thank you for watching. If you would like to support the podcast, rate us to 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you find your pod, and subscribe to the YouTube channel and click the bell button because that gets us these fucking sick guests like Tanner today. So, obviously. So, I love you guys for being here. I wouldn't be able to do this without y'all, and this is the reason why I enjoyed my life. So, peace.
Catch you.
Catch you guys later.
See you.
Fuck yeah.